morning. How's everybody doing? I just wanted to say I think everybody here has their own connection to the branch Davidians, and you all have your own story that's just as important as mine, maybe more important. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I came to know the branch Davidians. I lived in Hawaii for 8 years, and I come from a family of entrepreneurs. We've always been into businesses, my grandfather and my dad. So I was there. I was a member of the Adventist Church. For those of you who are familiar with the Seventh-day Adventists, I was a head deacon in the church. I had been at that church for almost, I think, 5 years. And one evening, I was invited to go to a Bible study at the Diamond Head Seventh-day Adventist Church one evening, and I went there, and there was a young man giving a presentation, and anyways, during his presentation, some of the elders in the church came over and stopped the Bible study he was giving, and it kind of bothered me because I'd never seen that spirit in the Adventist church before, this kind of like censorship. And they said, well, this isn't really doctrine of the church, and this needs to be taken to the leadership, and they will decide if we, the members, can listen to that. And I was like, there's something wrong with that, because I have a Bible, I have a mind, I can make up my own mind if what he's presenting is right or wrong. And that was my connection right there when that happened. I wasn't necessarily agreeing with what was being presented in the Bible study. I just didn't like the fact that they were stopping him and not letting him continue. So I got involved. I guess they disbanded the Bible study, and so I told the people, I said, look, if you want to come to my house, you're more than welcome to, and continue this. So again, I wasn't necessarily agreeing with it, but I thought the guy should be able to say what he wanted to say, and people make up their own minds. So that was my first connection to the message, if you want to call it that. So they started having Bible studies at my house. I really wasn't involved. I had 2 roommates, and it kind of went on. And eventually I was like, hey, this guy has something. I always wanted to know the book of Revelation, the prophecies. I had a lot of questions. But I also was running a business. I had 75 employees. I was a homeowner. I drove nice cars. I had Mercedes. For a young guy, I had everything going for me. And but one thing is, I tried to be honest. I figure I don't want to be a hypocrite. If I'm part of this organization, then I want to know the truth. And that's why I'm there. So I started listening to what he had to say, and eventually, you know, it would take hours to give you this whole story, and I don't want to, the short version, I don't want to go into that, but eventually I talked to Steve Schneider, and we got a plane ticket, and found out, well, there's this guy, he's from Texas. You know, I'm like, Texas? There's truth in Texas? I mean, and so I said, well, let's get, my words are, I want to get it from the horse's mouth, because the person that was in Hawaii actually got Bible studies from Perry Jones and David. So I was like, let's go down there ourselves. So we got plane tickets, we flew down, and finally I went to, it was Loma Linda University, and Dave was there, and they pointed me out to who he was. I just went out and stood behind him. I was listening to him give this presentation to a couple of young people, and I was like, yeah, everything seems, you know, kind of had long hair, kind of looked a little weird, but I try not to judge people by their appearance when I hear what they have to say. So eventually I went back. I met David. I got a 13-hour Bible study, which I know he sounds like a long time, but it was pretty exciting. I could never repeat it, but it was like truth I'd never heard or experienced. So I had to end up flying back to Hawaii, after that, Steve stayed there in LA, and eventually David came to Hawaii, and there was a big controversy. The islands was pretty crazy. When truth comes, there's a division and a lot of controversy. So eventually I made a decision. You know, I was like, well, if I don't want to be a hypocrite, if this is truth, then I want to pursue it fully and check it out. So people thought I was nuts. Here I was, I had a business. It was grossing $6 million a year. I had a house. I had everything I could want. So why walk away from that? But again, I didn't want to be a hypocrite. If you're part of an organization, you're there for the truth. And so I left, and I ended up here in Texas. And so for me, the whole reason of coming to Texas, it wasn't because I liked the state or the terrain or anything. It was all about the truth. Even Mount Carmel Center, I mean, it's, you know, we roughed it there. It looks a little bit nicer now, but we were there because of the truth. And that's what the property was about. Those of you that have been there, it was about the people. It was about the reason why we're there. Well, the people aren't there anymore. But so I don't know. That's my experience. And then the actual, without getting into all the details, the day of the raid. For those of you that don't know, I was at a gun and trade show in Austin, Texas, and I'd been there like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday was the last day. Well, Sunday, February 28th, I left in the morning to go back to Austin, and so the raid took place when I was gone, and I came back, and the perimeter, they already had sealed off the perimeter. They wouldn't let me in, so I ended up getting a motel here in Waco. I tried to call out to the property, and I couldn't get through. And I think I ended up calling, it was Maribel. Where's she at? Yeah, I ended up calling, I talked to you, I don't know if you remember, because I couldn't get in touch with anybody. You're the one that told me what happened, and I was kind of in shock because I didn't know anything. And then I started, I don't know, I went in, I turned on the radio and started going through, and then I heard David on that AM radio station doing that interview. It was kind of like weird that I just turned it and there he was, and listening to that. And so then I didn't know what to do. I got a motel room. I think I called the sheriff's department to find out what's going on and who's in charge of this, and they were like, hey, the feds took over, we had nothing to do with this. They were actually kind of apologetic about it. They were like, hey, we didn't have nothing to do with that. So I ended up getting a motel, got a radio, just monitored what was going on, tried to speak out to the media when I could to kind of rectify a lot of the false things they were telling. And then eventually I had a warrant for my arrest. They put me on America's Most Wanted, and it's a long story, but I ended up, I had my son with me. I took him to Vegas to drop him off with his mother, and I ended up in the Northwest, and there's a lot. But anyways, with Clive, I know Clive likes to focus, and I'm sad for people that pass away and suffer and die. But I don't want to live to be 92. You know, I want God to do something. I want to get out of this, you know, and it's bad. It's, you know, you miss your friends and the people that you were around, but I try to believe I'm in a better place and I'm going to see them again. So rather than focus on the loss, I want to focus on, I'm going to see them again. Amen. And be a little more positive instead of gloom and doom. But, you know, I guess there's a place for that. So I don't know, I'll just leave it open if you have any questions, because I don't want to stay up here all day. But Does anybody have anything they want to ask or they're curious about? Or go ahead.
Yeah, I called Mary.
Hi. Hi.
Yeah, you probably remember me.
Yes.
Riding back and forth.
Yes.
What day was it that you heard about the raid? Like, was it on the same day or?
Well, yeah, I was at the gun show in Austin, Texas, so I had to pack everything up, and the 28th was actually my birthday, so that day I had my son with me. He was like 14 at the time, and so we were gonna like go get a pizza or something after we were done with the show. So I didn't know anything until I came all the way back, and I don't know if the road that goes out to Mount Carmel, where we had the shop there, where we were working on cars. Well, they wouldn't let me through, but that day it was raining a lot, and I thought, well, maybe it's flooding. I didn't know. I was clueless. I didn't know what happened. So I think once I got on the phone and started calling, I didn't know until I think I talked to Maribel, and she's the one that told me what had happened. I think she said there was a raid, people were killed, you know, this and that. I was like, that's when I found out. So it was already maybe 7 o'clock at night already. It was dark. It was already in the evening. Yes?
If you weren't even on the premises, what did they charge you with? And why
They
would
charged me with everything: conspiracy to murder federal agents, aiding and abetting murder of federal agents, carrying a weapon during the commission of a crime. What was the other one? Conspiracy to manufacture automatic weapons, aiding and abetting manufacturing of automatic weapons. I had about 6 counts.
How were you treated in jail?
It was like a 5-star hotel. Actually, as far as the prisoners, the inmates, because of all what was being put on the media, I think they were scared of us. But as I got into that was a county jail, but as I actually got into the system, I think a lot of the inmates, though they didn't understand, they respected us because they were like, a lot of them have been done wrong by the system, so it was like, here's a group that actually stood up for themselves, and they were like, I wish I could be part of your church. You're some people that believe in something, you stood together, and you fought for what, you took a stand for what you believe in, and they respected that. So that was a good aspect of it, but you know, there's a lot of predators in prison. There's the bad aspect too, so it's not all you know, all good. You just got to take the good with the bad. Anybody else have a question? Anything at all? Go ahead.
How many times were you moved around?
In federal prison, or I started in Oklahoma City, like El Reno, and then from there I was transferred to FCI La Tuna in New Mexico, and then I think I did like 3 or 4 years there. Then I went to FCI Safford in Arizona. I was there about 4 years. I think it was 3 years in La Tuna, and then I got transferred to Lompoc, California. I was there for about 4 years, and that's where I was released.
Remember Eva?
Eva.
Vale?
The name sounds familiar.
We stayed at her house in northern Idaho in Hayden Lake, in Kalani. I stayed there.
Oh, Eva, down in the basement?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, there's like a whole other story that I don't want to take up all the time, but it was kind of strange. I mean, I had all these people helping me that I didn't even know.
They eventually poisoned her and killed her.
She was a beautiful lady. I mean, she was like, when I met her, she had light red hair, and she invited me. She had an apartment like down in her basement of her house, and it was like a complete, and she told me to stay here as long as, this is during the standoff that they were helping me, and that's when I was on America's Most Wanted, and I was being searched by the FBI, the ATF, and the Texas Rangers. But she told me, stay here as long as you want, don't turn yourself in. You know, and I was like, unbelievable that she would, you know, risk her own self to have me stay there. But I got moved. I wasn't there long. I got moved somewhere else. Yes?
Yeah. When you were in various FCIs, were you in with any other branch Davidians at the same time?
They said, well, when we went to El Reno, we were together. And I remember we were there, we all got to, you know, like stripped down to our underwear. It was like about 100 guys. That's kind of like the transfer center where they process you and then you get sent out. And I remember the guard there was, you know, the term redneck, but, you know, those kind of guys, big. So they were like, who here has, you know, 30 years, who has 20, you know, people were raising their hand. They said, who here is a branch Davidian? Which, why would they ask that? You know, I was like, and it's kind of exposing you because I didn't know the reaction with the system because I'm standing there with a bunch of, you know, prisoners, and I thought, you know, oh no, you know, it's kind of exposing who we are, and then, but, and then he goes, oh, we got a bunch of, what did they say? Oh, cop killers, that's what he yelled out to all these people, and I was like, oh no. And then, but after, all these guys start coming up and shaking their hands, which I was just really surprised, you know, they're like, hey, you know, and so what I thought was going to be a bad situation. So the question was, we were together, and then that's when we all got sent out to different institutions throughout the country, because there's federal prisons, I think, in, I don't know, of every state, but I think I'm the only one that got sent by myself. The rest of them, I think, got sent out with twos. 2 of them went. So, anybody else?
What are you doing now?
Well, I manage a restaurant. When I got out, my family was in San Diego. My dad, my son's 32 now. He actually has 2 restaurants, so I came back. You have to get a job. And so I didn't have to be at the halfway house. So I started as a dishwasher. And, you know, your family, my family's not really, I'm kind of always been, not a rebel, but, you know, they're all Catholics. I joined the Adventist church, so they're not into that. They're not really buying into the whole thing about Mount Carmel and why I was there. But that's their opinion. I still, you know, do what I do. But so when I got out, I think they thought, well, here's somebody that's been in prison for like almost 13 years, and they didn't know what to expect. So I guess I had to kind of prove myself. You know, I'm the same person, but with experience, that's just part of my experience. But so now I run the place. You know, it's just, but. So I work 6 days a week managing this restaurant. We actually have 2 now. We opened another. Anybody else? Anything at all?
I did notice that you said you were released in California?
Yes. They're supposed to release you to where your case is from. I was actually had my number from Houston because I flew from Spokane, Washington. Like you're right, I was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. That's where I was being, people were helping me, kind of hiding me. To this day, I've never talked to an FBI agent. I've never talked to an ATF agent. I was always like one step ahead of them, so they never found me. But so when I flew in, my lawyer's was Mike DeGuerin, was from Houston. So I flew from Spokane to Houston, Texas. And so that's where my number is from. They give you a number. And when you're released from prison, they're supposed to send you back to your, you know, where you're from. But they wouldn't allow any of us to come back to Waco. So I had to put in to go to, because my family was in San Diego, I put in for that, so I'd be released there. There's halfway houses all over the U.S. And prison. I had a 6-month halfway house period, and basically you live there, you go to work. It's actually worse than prison, a halfway house, but so I wasn't allowed to come back here. They have a lot of stipulations. You can't leave the county. You have to fill out a financial form. You have to know everything, money you're making. If you spend money on over $500, they have to know about it. So you have to jump through a lot of hoops to keep them happy. If you don't, they'll send you back to prison. But,
How long did they forcibly keep you from Waco?
3 years. I had 3 years of supervised release. So that ended in May last year. So now I'm done. You know, I got no paper. I'm finished with them. So I can do what I want to do.
So you can come and live in Waco if you want?
Sure. I want to get a house on the same street as my judge.
We'll have a big party.
The federal geezers do a lot. The judges do a lot.
How's your faith?
Well, it's been stretched to different.
Dimension?
Yeah, I think a lot of times people say, you know, sometimes I feel like it's God's work. I mean, for me, a lot of my faith. You guys gotta remember, I was in prison. It was a tough experience, and that's why I can take the opportunity now is to thank a lot of you, those that reached out, that wrote, that had words of encouragement. I think God inspired you, so I want to thank all of you for what you did. It really did help to get you through, because it was a tough experience. But as far as you say faith, I think the Bible says that Christ is the author and finisher of our faith. Sometimes I think it's God's job to do it more than mine. I mean, I think we have opportunities, truth is presented, you make decisions, you contemplate, you pray about it. It's a personal experience. I think each one of you, between you and God, I try not to judge anybody, because who am I?
Okay, this is Jeff Davis Show, live on location, Waco, Texas, 19 April 2010. Visiting today with Waco Branch Davidian, Mr. Paul Fatta. And Paul, I have basically one question for. First off, how long were you in prison?
I was in prison for 12 years, 7 months.
Okay. Well, what charges?
The original charges were conspiracy to commit murder against federal agents, aiding and abetting murder of federal agents, carrying a weapon during a commission of a crime, conspiracy to manufacture automatic weapons, and aiding and abetting the manufacturing of automatic weapons.
Okay, now where were you on the first day of the attack on Waco?
I was actually 100 miles away. I was in Austin, Texas.
And did you ever go to the Mount Carmel facility during any of the 51 days?
No, I did not. When I came back from Austin that evening, the perimeter was already secured. They wouldn't allow me past the... they had a barrier there outside, probably 2 miles back from the property.
Okay, now how then, the main question then is, how do you go from being charged with all these conspiracies to kill federal agents and all this stuff when you're 100 miles away at a gun show in Austin, Texas? How does that?
Well, I mean, it's the way the law is. They say if you have knowledge of something that they're going to hold you as responsible as the person that pulls the trigger. But you got to remember, it was a pretty political trial. They needed their pound of flesh. There was a certain amount of survivors, younger people like myself at the time. I was in my early 30s. So they had to take and get their pound of flesh, and they wanted somebody to be responsible for what happened. And it just happened that they got this small group of people that survived. So I was one of them.
So the bottom line is you spent 12 years in prison for these phony charges, and you weren't even on location at Mount Carmel during any of the 51 days.
No, I wasn't. I think the thing is, again, it was a political trial. They were trying to make somebody responsible for the tragedy. They didn't want to take responsibility for their actions, so they put these charges on. Well, there was 12 of us, and we fought for our innocence. We went through the judicial system. We hoped that there would be justice served, and you saw the outcome. I guess there wasn't justice, but you know, we try to leave it in God's hands at this point and be thankful that we're here where we are now.
You have an incredible story, a tragedy, but thank you very much for this.
All right, thank
discussion.
you.
Thank you.